AI is becoming extremely capable of doing a lot of work. And if you're fundraising today, I'm curious if, how you would have approached the growth given kind of the capabilities of AI to
Well, I mean,
folks.
I think that one of the challenges today, if you're being honest, is a compelling use of capital. For a lot of startups, it just costs so much less right now to build something, right, and prove it out.
Downtown Baton Rouge is having a moment, and Nexus Louisiana is proud to be part of it. For more than 30 years, we've been connecting founders, talent, and innovators to opportunities that move Louisiana forward. Now we're doing it from the heart of downtown Baton Rouge, where the people defining Louisiana's future are already at work. This series is your front row seat to our journey as we sit down with our partners and leaders shaping the future of Baton Rouge and its state. We're Nexus Louisiana. We're downtown, and we're just getting started.
Hey, everybody, this is Tony Zanders with Nexus Louisiana. Excited to be joined by two of my favorite local founders, Craig Gehring with MasteryPrep and Kellen Francis with CodeGig. We're in a pretty historic establishment here in the Tunnel. Just found out that this place is about to celebrate its 100-year birthday next year. A lot of interesting stories of lore related to previous governors, other famous people who used these underground passageways for various both famous and infamous activities. I think that we are, as people building technology, in good company here, because when you're building a startup, you're usually going to be considered controversial.
I thought you were going to say drinking alcohol.
Touche. I can just speak for myself. Now being a tech founder for 7 years, you start to get used to being a rabble rouser, ruffling some feathers, and so I think we're in a good place to talk about each of your journeys. Craig, I'm curious to just get started with you as the OG among us, having reached the milestone that we all aspire to one day, having an exit for your startup, MasteryPrep. But before we sort of start with that, let's talk about Baton Rouge for a bit, right? You've built your company here by choice, had options to obviously build elsewhere. What about this place made you want to kind of have that full journey?
I think that, for us, we had everything that we needed here, right? We had the team, tremendous talent here in Baton Rouge, and we built this core team that could get the job done. I was really committed to getting the job done for our students and for our educators. We had a community at Nexus, and that meant everything. And we had, the state is very, very tech friendly, very founder friendly, between the angel tax credits, the digital media tax credits. So it was a kind of perfect confluence. It's a real, even back then, over a decade ago, getting further from a decade ago, back when the angel community wasn't quite as organized, there was still a lot to work from and work with. And so there just comes a point of opportunity cost, and also the brutal reality that my customers don't care about my cap table. My competitors don't care about my cap table, right? And so at the end of the day, if I can get cash that I can use to make a better product, be more competitive, right? And the company's going to do well, even if that's a little dilution, even if that makes things more complicated, even if that gets more stakeholders, it felt like it was worth it. But yeah, I was wondering, like you said bootstrapping, like what's been that tension for you on?
It was a service side for us. So when you have a client that you have a great relationship with, in the end, it's hard for me to turn down that service side, is because that's what is the bread and butter. That's what kept the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
So having the ability to pivot, it was a fight night and day, because you're right. Do I want to go build my product? But I don't want to lose my actual core audience that we're satisfying, and they're actually paying the bills. The lights are being on for them. But initially, I feel like if you want to be great at something, you have to go create something that hasn't been done. The phrase is, on the opposite side of hard is better.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do something difficult so that I can say, look, I had something that was a tangible product. Now, the question I got is this gentleman here is, how do you manage that, dealing with running your own startup and being CEO?
Yeah.
It's a question I was hoping y'all could help me answer. First of all, it's fun, right? And I think as long as you're having fun, you can do whatever comes your way. I get so much energy from working with founders like you. supporting you, cheering you on from the sidelines, being in the trenches through Nexus. But what it does also with skill type, it motivates me to keep pushing. And with that startup, we're at this, fork in the road. We've decided to go the venture route after bootstrapping for 3 years. AI has disrupted our business model, but I think it's for the better. I look at it as like surgery. So we used to have a B2B platform that had a per seat license model, annual subscription, multi-year subscriptions. That's not the way the market's going. And it's more so based on usage. It's based on value. And so that disruption's welcome. And so there's a startup metaphor here. Like sometimes your bread and butter, whether that's a client or a feature that was once really popular that now is no longer popular, when that unexpected downturn comes, how do you find a way to impact the game and continue pushing forward? So curious if y'all have an example of a time when something you expected to go really well based on history and past performance, and all of a sudden a wrench comes, and what do you do?
See, I don't mind starting that one. So for me, the adjustment is COVID. COVID was the first punch to my company. I mean, you're talking about, I've been running my company now for 11 years. And going from a physical attribute of being in classrooms, I was teaching Excel to a lot of the chemical plant operators and going to formulas and macros, stuff like that. Well, guess what? COVID shut that down. That was physical classes. It was the adjustment that had to be done on the fly, because if not, that was going to be a down year. That was going to be the end of my company. So for me, it's always good to see what the adjustment is. But the question I have is, what is that for you on your side?
Well, what I thought of immediately was one of the hardest things that I went through at MasteryPrep. So we had this run early days. We went from $30,000 in revenue year one to $300,000 in revenue year two to $3 million in revenue year three. And guess what the number was on our projection for year four? $30 million for revenue. We're like, we're just going. We're just going.
Right.
We're doing times 10, baby.
Wow.
There we go. And just, spoiler alert, like we're almost at 30 million now. Like, like we're almost
cheers to that. Cheers to that. Cheers to that.
Almost. It didn't happen that year for sure. But we did the expenses, it's like, wow, we didn't 10x expenses, but we tried as hard as we could to do so, right? And we got way over our skis, just instantly over our skis. It would have been like this beautifully self-inflicted destruction. And there was this point where like I could have still like avoided facing the reckoning for like another 6 months, and then we would just be dead. It'd just be splattered on the street, right? And instead, and this was like up until that point, there was just this sort of boundless optimism of like, everything's going right, everything's gonna be good, and then I had to go to the team and just be like, actually, no, I was wrong. I made these wrong decisions. I did not manage our P&L correctly. I have to let go all these people and do these layoffs and change the company's trajectory, right? And it was super painful. It was totally necessary. And it, as a business owner, it was I learned a ton from it, right? Because then every time I'm looking at a P&L, like that means something, right? Like that budget, that means something, and how we're managing risk and things like that. But it was tough. So proud of the team that got through it, right? And it defined us going forward, because you have to be stable in K-12 education. You have to be there for your customers. It is not in general, a startup is a get rich slow scheme, right? It is not, you can have bursts and bits there, but like eventually you've got to have some staying power, right? And so
That's a bar. Get rich slow scheme. Yeah, the layoffs are hard. As soon as we raised capital, we followed the best practice. We went and hired. We thought that the bottleneck to growth was lack of people, lack of capacity, and hindsight being 2020, it's not. Especially fast forward to 2026, AI is becoming extremely capable of doing a lot of work. And if you're fundraising today, I'm curious if, how you would have approached the growth given kind of the capabilities of AI.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the challenges today, if you're being honest, is a compelling use of capital, right? For a lot of startups, it just costs so much less right now to build something, right, and prove it out. And I think that there's going to be more and more demand. I think it's starting. I think there's gonna be more and more demand for results. There's gonna be more and more demand for, hey, where's your traction? Like, you're saying I need X dollars to build something. It's like, I don't believe you anymore that you need XYZ dollars to build something. I think you need money to scale to after you've proven it out. So I think that's going to be a shift in how startups are evaluated. I think ultimately it still comes down to what is the founding team trying to build? Like, do they have an insight of the market? Do they have an insight into what it's going to take to be compelling to a customer? So I think that's all going to be the same. But I think the use of capital is going to be really scrutinized. Curious, Kellen, like, what's your spark that, like, because there's a point where, like, people who, like, finding a way means wanting to find a way, right? Like, what was your spark? Like, what was your reason to say, like, coming into this situation with COVID, saying, like, okay, I'm going to find a new pathway. I'm going to redefine the business. Like, what drives you to keep that going?
Oh, I'm sick in the head. I can be very honest with you about that. It's the diligence. My ambition, I can't turn it off. I don't know how to. It's a Hemi engine. It's an 18-wheeler. I have to. It's almost like the concept of the shark. I can't stop swimming. Like, I have to continue to go through what I'm doing. So whether I was doing AI, whether I was creating a company that delivers trash, pickups trash, whatever case, I was going to try to scale it, no matter what the case may be. It's just naturally in me to want to do that. The initial thing that I love to do the most part of this process, though, is what I'm enjoying the most: culture. I understand what AI is going to bring. I get it. Again, it may replace jobs. It may enhance jobs. But regardless, one thing you can't replace is culture. You can cut costs, you can save man hours, but one thing I noticed a lot, what we've seen, is to see that I have younger kids coming in and they're a little bit more ambitious. They're a little bit more hungry because now they feel like it's a level playing field. Because guess what? These tools are out here. I can go learn them too. Where you were in welding, that's a certain trade. Whether you were dealing with P-Tech, it's a different trade. Now, with AI, kind of seeing that narrative being placed everywhere, whether that's in the hospitals, whether that's in P-Tech, whether that's in shipyards, you starting to see that. So for me, I'm really driven by creating the culture now, and then that culture itself, I feel anyway, drives results. Kind of like a team. Hey, when my team's winning, you create that culture, it becomes contagious.
I believe that right now is the best and funnest time to be building, right, in this new edge of AI. Like, very specifically in the last 4.5 months, it is like the greatest time to be alive as a startup founder, right? It's just this it's a really special moment. So I can't imagine doing anything else, no. especially now, especially at this moment. And I think that places like Baton Rouge are going to become even more exciting for people in Baton Rouge. I think there's gonna be more founders in Baton Rouge. It's going to be a more exciting and compelling place to go because of all those barriers that you were talking about have been taken down, right? And while we're actually in a really good place in Louisiana in terms of capital available for startups, in terms of supporting organizations like Nexus to help people bring their product to market and work through it, I'm really optimistic. I think it's a really compelling time.
I think it's less scary.
Yeah,
I think it's less scary now because it's a lot of us being more front facing. Not just with the success, but also how we've gotten over the failures. Mm-hmm. So when you hear it from, a college standpoint, it's like, okay, it's not as scary. It's not as intimidating. So I see now with us being in the forefront of a lot of it, it inspires more than it gives a level of fear.
Mm-hmm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. There is no more exciting time to be building a tech startup. I couldn't agree more, Craig. Thank you so much for spending your Good Friday with us, both Craig and Kellen. And we'll see you on the next episode.